Over 200 fake cities lay ablaze throughout Britain during World War II, diverting potentially thousands of tons of German bombs from towns, cities and national infrastructure. They're called Starfish sites, and we're about to make our way to one that's still home to the ruins of its once highly dangerous control bunker. We'll find out what exactly these sites were, how they deceived German pilots during the Blitz, and we'll investigate what's left of the very room used to control it all. So let's go and take a look. Now this story takes us all the way back to 1939 and the outbreak of World War II. And as I mentioned, there were hundreds of these sites eventually, but today we're heading to one in the north of England, in West Yorkshire, right next to a place known as Cragg Vale. And the whole story centres around decoys. Decoy strategies have been used throughout war for a long time and are still in practice today in modern conflicts in 2026. This is what we call a trig point for anybody wondering, which I can explain in more detail in a future video if you like. But put simply, for right now, it means I've done the hard part of climbing the hill before I started filming. Back to these decoys though. At the outbreak of the war, a man named Colonel John Turner was tasked with running a decoy program, which initially resulted in two primary types of decoy sites throughout Britain, codenamed K sites and Q sites. The K sites were the daytime sites. Think things like dummy aircraft, fake buildings, runways for example. The nighttime sites had additional features like lighting to emulate certain places, cities or infrastructure as seen from the skies. And as World War II progressed, in Britain there were particular and still growing concerns of aerial attacks. Concerns which were very valid, especially as we approached a campaign known as the Blitz. And there was one particular event or attack in 1940 that's said to be the catalyst for the next steps, the evolution of these decoy sites. And it was a particularly heavy bombing of the city of Coventry. A bombing which you can still see evidence of today, probably in many ways, but maybe most notably, visually at least, are the remains of what was at the time Coventry Cathedral. And this period of... Morning? This period of intense bombing also confronted Britain with the problem of incendiary bombs. Incendiary weapons are basically weapons intended to start and subsequently spread fire. And so adapting to the rapidly changing situation, these nighttime sites, the Q sites, evolved to become QF, Q fire. Essentially what they did was introduce flash pans, for example, that could be used to light fires and emulate a site that had been bombed by these incendiary weapons. The purpose being much like it was originally, to confuse and deceive enemy pilots to dropping their payloads on the decoys rather than the legitimate targets. And with the addition of fire, the train of thought being that the pilots would see the flames beneath, think that the target had been hit previously, and then approach with a follow-up attack, thus protecting the cities and the towns and the airfields around. Now there are a couple of grey areas that I came across in terms of the naming of these sites, but from the sounds of it, Colonel Turner also gave these sites codename Special Fire, SF, which takes us one step closer to the name we heard earlier, Starfish. And on top of the decoy components themselves, there would have been a special space at these sites, these control bunkers, and that's what we're heading to right now. Now there are a few examples of these control bunkers left in ruins throughout Britain. There's one here in Cragg Vale in West Yorkshire, and another notable one in Somerset at the Mendip Hills. And I'll show you it up close once we get there, but essentially there would have been some operators in these bunkers stationed in there to remotely control and activate the decoys. And these sites popped up pretty rapidly after the outbreak of the war. In January of 1941, it's reported there were around 40 of these Starfish sites, and by the end of the same year, there were over 200. 237 is the figure that I found most frequently. If you enjoy these kind of stories and explorations, by the way, subscribing to the channel goes a long way to helping produce future episodes. So please do consider it if you haven't already subscribed. And if you've been here for a while, well, adventures like this are all down to you, so thank you so much. Back to our target destination though, and I've got a few questions in mind. For one, did these sites work and how effective were they? But also, what was this one for specifically? Now when it comes to Cragg Vale Starfish site, I've found a couple of different reports. Some say it was created to help protect the nearby city of Leeds. Others that it was to divert attacks from the nearby Greenland Railway, which at the time had a local marshalling yard that was shipping out military equipment produced in the nearby towns of Halifax and Huddersfield. Maybe the truth is it was to serve both purposes, but from what I've seen there is an info board there which hopefully might clarify that for us. And we will get to whether they worked or not, but lastly, before we check out the bunker, what about the name? You're probably wondering, why Starfish? Well, it's nothing to do with the shape of anything that was here, at least not that I know of. And actually the threads here are a little bit vague, but the other site that I mentioned in Somerset was one of the earliest of these now so-called Starfish sites, and is said to have been given the codename Starfish, borrowing the initials from Special Fire, SF. One thing that is missing though is how we went from having a single site with the codename Starfish to having all of these Special Fire sites referred to simply as Starfish sites. So I'm not sure how that leap happened, but well, here we are. Maybe somebody out there has the answer. As for this control bunker though, well, let's go and check it out up close and I can show you exactly how things would have worked. Here we go, Cragg Vale Starfish site. Now I called it a bunker. I guess it is technically subterranean. My understanding was that they were covered in earth and grass. Maybe they were at one time, but possibly not. And from the diagrams I've seen, they all shared the same design. Oh, it does have some earth on top. So maybe this used to be covered as well. Possibly not as underground as some of you might have expected, or as well protected either, but it has been built with blast walls, even so. So let's head in. May need a torch for this one. Here we go. So here's what we would have had. An entrance corridor with two doors on the left and right leading to two separate rooms. This room would have been home to the generators. You can see we've got these three beds here where the generators would have been sat. Now these were needed to power any lights and the fires as well, so that everything could be operated remotely. Presumably this was also to help set up the equipment, and somewhere there would have been, maybe that's what this is, a ventilation shaft. Very nice frame out into the countryside though. Now there's not a lot left in here today. We can see the generator beds and kind of get a bit of an idea of what this room would have looked like and felt like. Aside from that, not too much. Now the other room would be the operator's room. So we'd be heading out through this door, through a second door, and well, it's a tip now. But this is where the work would have been done, if you like. These days, as with a lot of ruins that I've come across, this is worse than some actually, just a local drinking spot. Maybe more than drinking, who knows. Now the operators in here would have essentially been waiting for a call. There'd been a field telephone that could alert them for incoming enemy bombers. At that point, it'd be their job to get the decoys active and basically prepare the site. And I suppose just hope for the best. And it sounds like it would have been pretty terrifying because you're kind of saying indirectly to the enemy, forget about the cities, forget about the runways, the railway yards, come and drop your bombs here. And I'm sure there would have been some distance between the control bunker and the decoys themselves. I don't know how far that would have been, but still, it sounds like a very high stress job. But I mean, I suppose the situation around the whole of Britain at that time was pretty scary. Now this, you may have had a guess, so you may be wondering, would have been where the escape hatch was. And I guess, you know, it's technically still an escape hatch, but it would have been sealed off as well with a hatch door. And there's not a ton left to see. Again, presumably Something to do with equipment maybe. Pretty solid brick walls that are mostly still standing. Just noticed as well, maybe we don't need the torch. This might be what was left of the escape hatch, possibly. A couple of pieces. These are kind of unusual too. There's a bit more like that down here. Not too sure. I'm going to need your help with that one. I think that's all there is apart from some broken glass. Yeah, I don't know. And I did come across another story about that site in Somerset, whereby they had an issue, a technical fault with their flash pans with the fires. And so they had to send one of the men out to basically run over, to light the fires manually, and then I guess just leg it back to the control room. And he was fine, but must have been pretty high octane circumstances. Don't know where that's from. Maybe that's just crumbled off here. There's another big bit there. And actually I can't explain the placement of this. Is that for protection purposes? There must be some purpose behind it, I presume. And it's kind of unusual. Now let's quickly go and check that info board, see if it answers the question of what this particular site was for. Oh yeah, we can see into the generator room from down here. And there's even a bit more brickwork down here. This I haven't got an answer for. There's a little bit more just sitting outside too from some pipe. All right, let's see if we can get our question answered with the help of the info board. And then I'll let you know, did these even work? Operation Starfish, 41 to 43. This site remains of an operations control post, one of numerous sites codenamed Starfish by the Air Ministry and Civil Lighting during the Second World War. This site was built to confuse German bombers aiming for Greenland Railway marshalling yards that were used to transport armaments manufactured in Halifax, Brighouse and Huddersfield factories, also from industrial targets in Manchester. The decoy consisted of a double row of a dozen flash pans where oil was burned to simulate incendiary bombs. Also used were decoy lights and shadow buildings. The bunker was the operations room that consisted of two rooms, either side of a central entrance passage defended by a high blast screen. Okay, so that's the wall I was calling it that we were looking at, which is a blast screen. So it was the railway in the end. So then the last thing to answer is, did they work? Well, I do have an answer, but it might not satisfy everybody because, well, it's difficult to say specifically and with confidence. There have been some archaeological studies done at the site in Somerset, for example, where they found no evidence of bomb blasts in the surrounding area. So that particular site, maybe not the most effective, but all in all, it's believed that yes, it was a successful program. I've found similar but differing estimates that put the number of tons of bombs diverted from key sites ranging from around 1,000 to thousands. And of course, we'll never know exactly how many tons were dropped on the decoys and diverted away from the real targets. So the best I can say is it was probably quite a lot, and I'd imagine a lot of lives saved as well. Now, if you want to visit one of these decoy sites, well, there might be one near you. There are not so many that are in as good condition as this one, but they are out there, so it's worth having a look around, see if you can find one nearby. If you want to visit this particular one, well, you've seen what the local area looks like. It's really nice. A lot of beautiful countryside, moorland, and we're on open access land here as well, which means we've got freedom, if we want to kind of roam throughout the landscape, whilst being aware of the various natural wildlife around as well. So have a look on OS Maps and you'll find lots of footpaths around. I'll put my route from today into the members section very soon. And if you've got any questions about anything from the video or more to add, well, let us know in the comments. There's a lot more coming on the channel very soon. So hope you've enjoyed this one. Thank you for supporting the channel and fingers crossed I'll see you on the next one.